Hey, pussycats, it's Laura. That's weird, right? It's still weird. Anyway, hi, how are you all doing? My name is Laura, and today I want to talk a little bit about Etsy stuff and also, though, primarily shipping to the European Union countries or the EU. It's going to be a problem, and you're probably going to have to stop doing it. You probably should already have stopped doing it. Let's talk about it a little bit. But before we talk about that, I need to talk about this shirt. Hold on. Mm, coffee's already lukewarm. It gets cold so fast. Look at this shirt though. Oh, I'm definitely expanding my crazy cat shirt collection. Look at that. Look how thin this is. Like holes and everything. It's gorgeous. Look at the back. How cute is that? Both like the cats, but also that it's like worn thin. It's amazing. I got this from Nikki Terry Style on Whatnot. I paid, it was $15 plus shipping. And thanks to probably all of you watching this, I had a credit for Whatnot spending. So I only paid for the shipping, which was amazing. And I'm going to remember to link her below. She has a YouTube channel too, and she's great. She's so much fun to watch. And she's obviously amazing to buy from. The last time I bought something from her, I mentioned how, for first time customers of hers, she includes this little like retractable measuring tape, which I love. I've been using that thing nonstop. And she sent me a second one, and I feel very special. Don't expect her to send you one every time because I don't think she does that. But I do feel very special. Also, very fortunate because I can't find the original one she sent me. So now I have a backup. Yay. Anyway, love this shirt. Thank you so much. I'm definitely expanding my cat shirt collection. So excited. So, Etsy weirdness. First thing I'll talk about is I think I told y'all I have some packages that I dropped off at the post office about 6 days ago. And my poor, very overworked one woman show post office woman, Esther, scanned them in as delivered instead of accepted, which was obviously an accident. Esther's amazing, and I am not faulting her for anything. She is an absolute angel and a workhorse, and she's fantastic. But those packages have still not been scanned, anything other than delivered at my post office, and it's been 6 days. I cannot open a missing mail request until they have been at least 7 days out of their shipping date. I did try to do it today, and it didn't go through because it hasn't been 7 days. So I probably will not be able to do it tomorrow because I'm going to be out at the bins tomorrow in Connecticut. Very excited about that. But my customers are being very, very cool about it. Thank goodness. By the way, have you noticed that I have very cool customers? Whenever there's an issue, like everybody's super awesome. So that's amazing. So there's that. The random issue that I was having with Etsy this week, I don't know if you all have experienced it. It definitely was not just me, but I don't feel like it was super across the board. I was uploading my listings to Etsy, and I use Vendoo because I list everything on Vendoo first. And from Vendoo, I push it out to Etsy, eBay, and Depop. Always do it, never have a problem, except for, I don't know if it's even been a full week, but definitely several days, where I've been getting an error message on Etsy that my photos are too low of a resolution. They want a higher resolution photo. And I was like, why? That's weird. And what was extra weird about it was one of the listings that I put up, I had already used those photos for something else. Like I photographed like a skirt and blouse together, and I had already listed the skirt with no problem. When I went to list the blouse using the same exact photos, it was giving me an error message. And I was like, okay. So it was doing this for everything. And I think I went in at one point, I went into the Etsy listing, deleted the photos out, and uploaded them directly from my phone. And that was fine. And it didn't give me an error. So I figured, okay, it must be something between like the Vendoo to Etsy communication. So I reached out to Vendoo. Vendoo was like, huh, that's so weird. We'll look into it. And I updated them here and there with like, additional things that I had tried or things that were working or not working. And they just said, thanks, we'll look into it, essentially. When I was uploading more and more things, I would have one or two that would list without any problem. I had some that had previously said low resolution that then suddenly kind of fixed themselves. But I had several others that I tried to delete the photos and add them back into Etsy again unsuccessfully. Like it kept giving me the low resolution message, even though I was listing the photos directly to Etsy from my device, from my phone. And Etsy's requirements for a photo are that they be 2000 pixels by 2000 pixels is ideal. It has to be a minimum of, I think they said 635 pixels in either direction. My photos are 3024 pixels either way. So it's not that my photos are not high resolution enough. It's that somehow Etsy is not taking them up. I don't know what they're doing. So I messaged Etsy. I initially got like a very generic, this is how you list an item kind of response back. And I'm like, no. So then I sent the message again and they responded and said, yes, sorry, we're experiencing a problem with uploads from third party systems like Vendu, and we're working on it. You can try uploading the photos directly to Etsy. And I was like, I don't know if you read my message. I've been doing that and that's not working either, but whatever. So, I sent both Vendu and Etsy examples, actual listing numbers, item numbers, whatever you want to call it, told them exactly what was going on. This morning, I uploaded something to Etsy via Vendu as usual, and I did not get an error message. So I don't know if the problem is fixed or if that was just another random one that happened to go through properly. We will see when I try to upload some more. I will say that Mercury went out of retrograde yesterday. So is that the reason? I don't know, but we'll see. Maybe the problem is solved. So the bigger issue that we need to talk about is this European Union thing. If you have not already heard about it, there are new regulations that went into effect on December 13th, 2024, for anyone who is selling items to people in the European Union. It does not matter what your items are. It does not matter how large your business is. These rules, at least at this point in time, apply to you. So I think that for the majority of us, that means that we can no longer sell items to the European Union. So the regulation is called the General Product Safety Regulation. Now, I had not really heard anything about this until maybe 2 weeks or so before it was set to go into effect. I saw a post from a woman on Instagram. Her name is Hey, it's Laura Jane, and I'll try to remember to put her link down here below. She made a reel about this whole situation, and I was like, this is really weird, and I wasn't sure what to think about it. I mean, I hadn't gotten any kind of messages from Etsy or eBay or anyone, just this woman on Instagram. She does happen to be located in the UK, so of course, initially I was like, it's probably not something I need to worry about, but I looked it up, and it is something I need to worry about, and how cool that none of these platforms let us know. So that's not legible. I'm not reading that at all. The General Product Safety Regulation is probably something that's put in place for a good reason, but it definitely sounds like it's not being applied appropriately at this time. And essentially what it's saying is that if you are making products available for sale, you have to be able to assure the safety of those products for use. And so think of in terms of like all of the flammable notices on pajamas from the 70s and things like that, or like being able to recall food items or non-food items for that matter. So if you are a manufacturer, this makes a lot of sense to me. If you're going to be putting goods out there, you have to be able to ensure that they are safe for people. What these requirements are asking is that, let's say you're a handmade seller. You have to be able to say like, yes, this yarn that I'm using is safe. And here's like a serial number or a reference number for this batch of yarn that I purchased or whatever. This dye that I'm using is safe. This beads, I don't know what y'all handmade people are doing, but you have to be able to ensure that your products are safe for use, but also that the things used to make your products are safe for use. And that sounds like, Laura, that's crazy. Who's going to be able to do that? Right. I know. And so the general consensus seems to be that even though this seems like an insane standard to apply, especially to small sellers like us, nonetheless, it is a standard that is being applied to small sellers like us, and it does apply to secondhand goods. Now, if I were sitting over here selling like Free People and J. Crew items, even then it would be a really difficult standard for me to meet. Maybe I would be able to say, okay, I know that this is safe because J. Crew said so, and I don't know what type of proof I would have to have of that, but it's at least a little bit more realistic. If I were making items myself, maybe it's a little bit more realistic. But as a vintage seller, this really seems not applicable at all. Like, there's no way I can do this, right? Now, you may think, okay, well, clearly they don't mean vintage. Yes, they do. The antique, they do have an exception in place for antique items, but again, antique items or collectibles, as they're saying, are items that are more than 100 years old, or like maybe if it's like, you got a piece of like Banksy art or something that somehow you found, like has rare historical collectible value. And I am positive that I am butchering these explanations, but this is kind of the crux of all of it. You can see, I'll put some reference videos below. I've been watching a couple of different people. I did read through the thing on Etsy's site. I did go and check on eBay's site. They are both basically just referencing the law itself. There are some things that seem particularly vague. And I think that part of the problem is that even from Etsy and eBay's perspective, it's kind of vague. eBay has added some areas into listings where you can fill out like drop downs or little areas if you need to include information for products. And I believe that if you don't have this information filled out on eBay, your items won't be shown to European Union buyers. My only problem with that is eBay says may not be shown. So my concern is that they may also be shown and then somebody will buy something from me and I'm not going to be able to sell it to them. Another thing that makes this law a little bit more complicated, it sounds like, is that these rules apply to you if your items are made available for sale. So even if somebody is able to see and purchase your item, but you cancel the sale, it was still made available to them. So you basically have to shut off shipping for European Union buyers. The other concern here is that let's say you can meet all these weird regulations, you can provide safety information for all of your components, for your items, whatever it is. You also, now I have to grab my laptop again, so sorry. You also have to have what they call an economic operator on your account. This is a person who is in the European Union that is sort of like the point of contact. So if a buyer has some sort of issue, this is kind of who they would reach out to. So, and obviously, like, unless your Uncle Larry lives in Italy and can be this person for you and has the knowledge and whatever to do this, you probably have to pay a company to do this. And even if your Uncle Larry lives in Italy and is a very capable human being, I'm sure there are things that he's going to have to comply with that it's more than just like some dude living in Europe. You know what I'm saying? So there's a lot going on here. As a result, I just went in and turned off all of my shipping for the European Union. So that means on Etsy, I removed the countries. On eBay, I removed the countries. On Depop, I basically just turned off worldwide shipping because you can't select which companies you ship to on Depop. So somebody would have to message me if they wanted to buy something and they were not in the US. Now, I don't make international sales on Depop anyway, so I'm not super worried about that. I barely make US sales on Depop. I did turn off those countries on Etsy and eBay. Now, here's the other thing too, is that Etsy at least has like Europe as a destination for shipping. But that includes a lot of countries that are not necessarily part of the European Union. Now, I did go through, like, I looked up on Google who's in the European Union and I selected each one of those countries to exclude. Honestly, the countries that were left over are places I have barely heard of, let alone ever sold anything to. So if you just shut off all of Europe, it's probably not a big deal, but do what you want. The one little additional, I guess, some sort of metaphor I can't think of, problem is Northern Ireland. So the UK is not part of the European Union. Yay, because we make a lot of sales to the UK, right? However, Northern Ireland is part of the UK, but is also part of the European Union. I don't understand it. It's a Brexit thing. I think half of the people in the UK don't understand it, but here we are. So I did not shut off shipping to the United Kingdom because I do get, when I make international sales, my international sales are typically United Kingdom, Australia, Canada. I've done a handful to Italy or France, maybe some to Japan, right? So not that many countries, but UK is definitely one of the more common ones for me. So I'm glad I didn't have to turn that off. But that also means that people in Northern Ireland can still see and purchase my items. So I am going to take a risk there. I'm just going to like not ship things to Northern Ireland. If I happen to get a sale from there, I'm just going to cancel it. But we'll see what happens. Now, at this time, I suspect that we will hear more about this in the future. This is really crippling for small business sellers. Being in the United States, something like this happens, and really, like, worst case scenario for me is like, crap, that sucks. I can't ship to Europe anymore. I don't even want to think about how this is impacting sellers like myself who happen to be in the European Union. That seems like insane to me. So I feel like we're going to hear more about this. All of the information that I've gathered has been from other vintage or handmade sellers, specifically Etsy sellers, who happen to live in the UK. So the information has been really valuable. I will link both of their channels below. There's Kim Bliss and Pam Duthie. And I really enjoy watching both of them. So I'm going to link them below and their GSPR videos because they actually did like research and read things and spoke coherently. So it'll be a lot more useful for you. But it still sounds like there's a lot of confusion around this issue altogether. It sounds like there's sort of a generalized agreement that, like, how can they be applying this like across the board like this? I think that the intention with these regulations is probably more for companies like Shein and Temu and all these places where they're pumping out these like toxic goods. There's enough information about how products made by these companies, and I know that Temu isn't like the whatever, you know what I'm saying? All these cheap, crappy imports coming from all these places, they're trash, and the regulations are not very good. And I think that this is meant to put some safety requirements in place for those types of companies. But unfortunately, we are really getting stuck in the crossfire. The other thing that I get really concerned about is what if something like this were to spread to the United States? Now, thankfully or not thankfully, the United States is much more concerned with making a dollar than protecting its citizens a lot of the time. So maybe I'll be okay as far as being able to sell things still. We'll see how that goes. Things have gotten more difficult for small sellers in a lot of ways that thankfully I've been dodging for the most part. I think like people who do secondhand luxury resale have also felt a lot of pinch because a lot of these companies like Chanel, uh, like Nike, you know, they've really kind of come down on secondhand sellers, and they do a lot of like claims that, you know, they'll flag your item as not being authentic, even if it is. And so like people who sell luxury goods are having a hard time with things like that as well. And that sucks so much. So I don't know. For now, I've turned off my European Union shipping. The other question that I still have that I do not know an answer to, on eBay, I've always set it so that I do my own international shipping. I really don't utilize eBay's global shipping program thing. But I don't know if the reason I don't know if that's turned off for me. I went through eBay and like turned off European Union for all of my shipping settings, but I don't know if they're still able to purchase through global shipping. I think that I don't get global shipping orders because when you order through eBay's global shipping program, you as the buyer are paying like all of your customs fees and all this stuff up front. And I think it's more expensive than if you just were able to do it like order directly from the seller and then pay your customs fees at customs. I'm not positive, but you know, I don't really get your global shipping orders, but I don't know if I may still get them now. I haven't figured out if that's like disabled because I do my own shipping, or if I have to do something else to disable it. I probably should figure that out. But also, it kind of sounds like eBay is maybe not going to let countries see your items if you don't have these little areas filled out for the safety standards and all of that. I know it's a lot, right? It was very confusing. I didn't have any pretty graphics to help you out. All I had was this cool T-shirt for you to stare at while I talked. But that's kind of where we are. I feel really terrible for people in European Union. I'm very surprised that I haven't seen more about this. I do want to go into some of the Facebook groups. I'm part of a Facebook vintage group where a lot of people do like person to person sales. So it's just like, Jane is selling to Mary and, they work it out with PayPal or whatever. But the problem is, even with that stuff, like I feel like it's going to be problematic. And unless you're doing it as some sort of friends and family, which you should never do, then it's going to be difficult. If I were to sell to somebody through Facebook, I would be sending them a PayPal invoice, words, and I have a PayPal business account. So, you get like all your tax information and all that stuff still happens with that. I am not able to accept friends and family payments on PayPal, so I would have to have a separate personal account to do that. And as you hopefully are aware, friends and family payments do not protect the buyer. Uh, as a seller, if somebody sends me money as like a friend, then I don't really have to claim that as income. It just looks like my friend sent me money for whatever reason. But that also means that the buyer doesn't have any protection. That's not the kind of seller I want to be. The particular groups I'm thinking of on Facebook do prohibit that type of activity. They require sellers to send invoices of some sort. Of course, you can use other platforms like Venmo, probably Cash App and stuff. But Venmo, I know, has a business account thing. I don't have one of those. There's Square. There's all sorts of different ways that you can pay for stuff. But in the end, I think that if you are running as a business and you are working outside of a platform like Etsy or eBay, you are still at risk of being penalized or shut down if you're not following these regulations. And so what happens if you don't follow these rules? If your items are still available, I think that you do run the risk of having your shop shut down, which is bad. I think that the other thing is maybe you'll be penalized. I don't want to find out anyway. You know what I'm saying? I don't want to know in any of those scenarios what would happen to me. I'm just not going to ship stuff to Europe anymore, which sucks. But hopefully it's something that they clarify regulations on. I understand a little bit why they would not necessarily say, oh, this doesn't apply to secondhand sellers, because I could go to whatever, Macy's, okay, buy a bajillion dollars worth of things and then turn around and sell them on eBay. And because I'm not Macy's and I'm not the manufacturer, I'm a secondhand seller, but I'm not. Do you know what I mean? So like it might be hard to put those guidelines in place. And even for vintage items, if you are into vintage clothing, if you're a vintage seller, buyer, etc., like over time you get to know what's vintage and what's not. But for people who don't know what they're talking about, who are new to vintage, it can be very easy to be fooled by things. And, if you go thrifting or shopping at all, you'll see that a lot of the things that are put out right now by companies like Shein, Cider, Romwe, they all have this very cool vintage aesthetic. I definitely come across things in thrift stores that look like maybe they could have been vintage until you look at the construction or the tags or whatever. And then you're like, oh no, this is modern crap. And so you can't just go by, well, it looks vintage. Do you know what I mean? Like there's got to be some sort of regulations in place to help with this. I have no idea how that works. I'm not a person in charge of making rules like that. Thank God for all of us. But it's going to suck. So we'll have to see what happens. And I really feel for the people that are in the European Union that are being sort of like cut off at the knees with this. Hopefully they get some clarity around this soon. Hopefully we all do. Also, thanks for doing it right before Christmas. That was fun. So anyway, that's my little update for the week. Easter. I hope that you all found that. I know you didn't find it like useful, but maybe you found it useful enough. I am going to link those videos down below because they were super helpful to me, especially Pam Duthie's video. She really goes through all of the different points, and some of it can be a little bit dry, which is not her fault. It's the material. She also has a couple other videos showing you how to turn off your shipping in Etsy if you want to do that. She doesn't go through the eBay stuff, but I'm sure that you can find that online as well. So there we are. I am going to go back to listing and see if my photos are still uploading to Etsy with full resolution. Fingers crossed. Thank you all so much. And I will see you again soon.